We're live, but we're not actually doing anything.
Yeah, we're live. We're just, we're waiting for people to see this beautiful photo and go, what are these guys talking about?
Why is this guy standing next to a She-Hulk?
Why is this guy not pointing the picture at the thing he wants to look at? Are you taking a picture of the photographer taking a picture of you?
That's a morning call picture. So he's like, hey, just lean up against your camera and I'll take some pictures. I'm like, all right. Sounds good.
All right. Okay, it's 9:55, which is interesting. I don't think I've done a live at 9:55. Oh, Chris, we're on now. We're live.
Oh,
Good morning.
Hey. I'm just sharing your link on Facebook.
Perfect. So I want to introduce, before we get into your stuff, I want to introduce everybody to kind of what you've been doing here. We did show some photos. You guys don't have to read this, but I want you to really take me through what happened with all this. We have a lot of photos and some fun things we're going to go through. You have some photos to share as well. But first of all, let's introduce you, Christopher Elston, who I know very well, but other people might not. You're a photographer, videographer, whatever, from the Lehigh Valley. But you worked at NFL Films, all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah, I've worked in television and video production and photography. And I've been freelancing, owning my own business for like the past 20 years. I was at a production company before that and at the Express Times newspaper before that.
Me too! We were there together. Remember that? And you're like, who's this Whacker guy?
That doesn't sound like a real name. George Whacker, that's a stage name.
He doesn't really exist.
So I grew up in Easton in Palmer, and when we got our driver's license, my friend had a a Dodge Caravan, and we just used to drive all over the Lehigh Valley because we're like, hey, let's get away from Easton and let's just see what's out there. So we'd visit like the South Mall.
Oh man, wait, that was the destination you picked? You're like, we have the whole Lehigh Valley in this minivan. Let's go to the South Mall.
Forget the White House Mall or the Lehigh Valley Mall. Let's see what's going on at the South Mall. And I remember like they had a fairly good record store. I forget what it was. Like before it was FYE, it was something else and something else. And so we just like bounce all over. And my friend, who is an art professor now, was always in the comic books. And he's like, well, let's just hit all the comic book stores. So we had Mr. Monsters in Easton. There was Dreamscape, and Beachhead was in Allentown. So we're like, we'll hit Beachhead. And it was in like this cool, like, you would never find it if you didn't know it was there. Like, I guess we had to use the yellow.
It was like 15th and Chew, right? So it's like
15th and Chew in a neighborhood. Like, it's a block away from the Lehigh Valley Hospital and a block away, from the Allentown Farmers Market. But if you didn't know it was there, it was kind of hard to find because you wouldn't really drive past it. You drive,
especially when you're 16 and you're kind of new to the Lehigh Valley driving around.
I assume my friend found it in the Yellow Pages or something. He's like, hey, let's go. And it was like exactly what you wanted it to be in a comic book store. The guy was kind of strange with a gravelly voice. He smoked a lot. The shop smelled like smoke. It was dense with comics and things hanging up and T-shirts and stuff. And it was fun. And my friend always followed like a bunch of different comics, and I just was in there to find the weirdest comics I could find, just because I didn't really follow any major DC or Marvel. I was just buying just weird stuff. And I always like the side of the building was this giant 10-foot by 12-foot.
That's what we're looking at, yeah.
With Batman and Spider-Man, who you knew. I didn't really know She-Hulk, but she was in the Fantastic Four for a while. The Thing took a little break from the Fantastic Four.
Is this that time of the comics where?
So in the mid-'80s, yeah, The Thing had his own comic, so She-Hulk slipped in, and she was the fourth of the Fantastic Four for several years.
And she's very underrated. I mean, she does have her own Netflix show coming out, though.
Yeah, that's why I've been buying like a lot of it's funny because like every 10 years I get into comic books. So we you used to go, and then I kind of didn't go anymore, and then I went to college, and then I got a job out of college. I got a job at the Express, and then I got a job at MedStar, and MedStar was out in West Coastville. So I'm like, well, I need an Allentown apartment. So
wait, before, let's skip over it. For people who don't know who MedStar is the company that made the Forensic Files.
Right.
So I don't have it keyed up, but you're actually in a couple episodes. So is my, I think my mother-in-law's in one episode.
A lot of people, a lot of local actors were in, and a lot of like Philly actors and stuff. But anyway, it was a forensic science show. It used to be called Medical Detectives when it was on the Learning Channel. Then it got sold and repackaged as Forensic Files. Then we did a bunch of Forensic Files episodes. Anyway, so I got an apartment in. So I got an apartment in Allentown, diagonally across from Beachhead Comics.
Okay.
And wait, let me see. So I was like, I'm gonna get it. I used to love this place. I'm gonna get into.
So how did you come about? So you live by it, you know of it. What was the moment like when you took this picture? Because I remember when this was kind of happening. This is September, of 2021. So were you driving by it? Like, what made you stop and go, "What's going on here?"
It's funny because like whenever I needed, I could like. My old car was a Scion, and for some reason it's so flat that I always need once every 2 years I need my windshield replaced. So I just go to Jack's Glass, and they're like, well, it'll take like 3 hours, so you can wait in the lobby or whatever. So I would just like drop off the car and walk around the old neighborhood that I used to live in. So I'd go to like the farmer's market, and I'd go to, get a hamburger or something. And I'd pass by this place, and, like I used to go to West Park a lot with my kid. So my daughter, we moved from here to 17th Street, and then my daughter was born, and then we moved to Emmaus finally. But every time I'm in the neighborhood, either getting a new windshield or showing my daughter.
Or a hamburger, right. Well, didn't you say you and your daughter used to walk by here?
Yeah, when she was a baby, I used to push her around the neighborhood, and I pushed her in West Park, pushed her by the comic book store and stuff. And so, it was... So now it's been a long time since I lived near there, but I'd always go back. And every time, I always go back, and like the sign is so kind of interesting. And I never knew who Cerebus was, who was the aardvark in the middle. I found out this year from my comic book friend. It's Cerebus. It was the longest running.
Oh, this guy here?
Yeah.
I'm putting in the middle where the thing's black out. Yeah.
So he was the longest running independent comic book. I think Marvel wanted to buy him at some point, and the guy never did. So he was a Canadian artist and writer, and just made this comic book for like 300 comics. Okay. And just would sell to independent comic book stores. So anyway, every year I'd kind of watch it, the sign degrade. I'm like, oh, it's always really cool. And there was a butler that was always on the front. So if you go. Oh, is this mine still? Yeah.
Here, I'll bring yours in. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, bring mine up. So
I'm going to take mine out.
2016, I took this picture, and it was a year after Jeff, who owned Beachhead Comics, died. And I was like, oh, man, that guy died. He was always like an interesting character. I didn't know him that well, but he was always like an interesting guy. And I've known him since I was in high school. And I'm like, oh, well, that's the end of an era. Beachhead Comics is closed. They kind of had their 30th party. They had like a remembrance for him, and then they had their 30th anniversary party, and then they kind of closed it. And I'm like, well, that's sad. And then, I took some pictures of it. And then, like this year, I saw, Rigo Art Gallery coming soon at the building. I think.
And that's Rigo Peralta, right?
Peralta, who is a great artist in Allentown.
I've seen his stuff at the Allentown Art Museum. Yep.
Yeah. So I think this is like, the reflection is probably me and my daughter, like just taking a picture going, hey, what is it? Like, my daughter's 17 now. But I'm like, I used to go to this comic book store, and I'm like, I wonder what this is. And there used to be so at this point, it was like spray painted over, and there used to be a butler painted on the front door.
Okay.
And, Rigo's cleaned up the whole building, and it looks really nice, but he scraped the butler off. I'm like, oh, if he scraped the butler off, he's not going to.
What's going to happen?
He's not going to want this giant sign. And also, this giant sign is so cracked and peeling that even if he was going to do something there, he wouldn't use.
And you can't really blame him for that, can you? I mean,
no. I mean, this
right.
Is like,
I bought this new place, and there's this art. I like it, but it's oh my goodness, like who's going to do this?
It's 10 foot by 12, and it takes up the space. And he's like, it's not. He's like, it's not Beachhead anymore. So I finally tracked him down. Like I put a bunch of stuff on the internet saying, who owns this place? Somebody finally let me know that it was Rigo. I contacted Rigo online, and then I actually just went by and I said, hey, what are you doing with that? He's like, if you want it, you can have it. So I'm like,
Yes.
oh. And I'm like, cool. And then I looked at it and I'm like, holy crap.
Where am I going to put this? Yeah.
So that's my old apartment that's diagonally across
Okay.
that I used to live at. That's Jeff, who used to own Beachhead. There's me trying to figure out who owns the place. And I just took a picture, like, a bunch of...
Well, you're kind of doing some detective work at this point, a little bit, right?
And I'm going on Google Maps and getting, like, old pictures of it and going, yeah, who owns it? So there's
a butler.
And, he scraped it off. I'm like, oh, I need this thing. So then I'm looking at it going, God damn, this thing's giant. This is what
Look what it looked like. Oh, my... I get, what is that on? Like, what is that material?
Because it looks... is, like, 10 different sheets of somebody told so it's metal, but somebody told me it might be like from like tin roofs or something. It's magnetic, so it's tin magnetic, but it's so somebody's saying that's probably what they used to like put on tin roofs and stuff, and they just made a sign out of it. So this is from the original Beachhead's Facebook page, which the new Beachhead somehow lost like the credentials to get in. So the new guy bought the name and a backlog of a bunch of comics and opened
Did they relocate?
They're still on Chew Street, but they're closer to downtown. I think they're 13th and Chew. It's closer. Oh wait, where's that? There's a bar. It's not Jabberwocky, is it? I don't know. Anyway, there's a bar and it's a diagonally across from a bar down there. So I was like, look how cool this was, and I'm like, should I get it restored or not? So then I was doing some research. This is what it was. So
before what it was. Okay.
So
how'd you find this?
So this is on the Beachhead sign too, the Beachhead Facebook page. So I started doing a deep dive on the sign itself. So it was from 85 to 2015. It was the comic book store. From like roughly 75 to 85, it was Gold Seal Realty. From about 45 to early 70s, it was Mest Pharmacy, and then before that, it was Hollenbach Grocery Store. So there's a sign of what it looked like in 85, middle of 85.
It's great that they have those photos, though.
Oh yeah,
like
there is hardly anything on the internet about the store or like it's just their Facebook page. I was able to find a bunch of stuff on, and even in like the morning call, like I got a subscription to newspapers.com just to find like old Gold Seal Realty signs or Mest Pharmacy signs, advertisement, and there's hardly anything. So this is the original Butler, which is different from the other Butler that I just showed you.
Right, this Butler looks a little bit less friendly.
Yeah, kind of.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm coming in.
So the guy that painted the sign painted this Butler, and a new guy, that window was broken a few times, I think. So a new guy painted the new Butler that I remember. But that was the old Beachhead. So I just started taking pictures of it and stuff. And then I was trying to, so there's me, like,
what am I going to do?
I'm trying to, so I stood on there to try to show you, like, how big this sign is. And then I'm like, okay, well, I kind of figured out, since it's so cracked and stuff, I don't want to bring it back to how it was.
What's cracked? Is that metal cracked? Is that what?
No, you know what it is? While doing research, like, it was 4 other signs. So I think if you see there's an oval around She-Hulk and...
Yep. Yeah, okay.
The Aardvark. And inside the Aardvark's hand where he's holding the sword, it says ICE. So I am 99.9% sure that was a Breyer's ice cream sign. And I think it was built for the grocery store. So it was probably a Breyer's ice cream sign, and then it said Hollenbach Groceries on top, I assume. Because... And
then that was that beneath or on top?
So that was the first layer, was probably a Breyer's ice cream sign. And then so it's been painted so many times that it's cracking because of the old paint. And yeah, so this is just the beginning, 12 feet by almost 10 feet high. So you can see
at this point were you like, what am I, should I continue
like,
to do this?
I'm kind of great. But like you can see how cracked it is. So if you really wanted to restore it, you'd almost just want to just paint a new one. But as I was looking at the cracks, like I said, I saw like
there's stuff underneath it, right?
There's stuff underneath it. So it's kind of interesting as a history of the building and what other signs it was. So this is me starting to clear coat it. You can see to the right of Spider-Man's head, it's a little darker. So that's me just putting clear coat.
And clear coat, does that just protect everything that's kind of in place?
Well, I knew I was taking it down, and I didn't want any more paint to chip off. So I just needed something clear on it to kind of bind all the paint.
And Spider-Man's like, thank God.
Yeah.
Been waiting for this.
So it's tacked in. It's like 10 pieces of metal tacked to some 2x4s and some 2x2s. So my initial thought was I'm going to clear coat it, take a razor blade, cut each section so I can get the sections apart. And, you know, hopefully...
And then put it back together, right?
And then put it back together. So this is the clear coat I was using.
But that didn't work out, though, does it? Because from what I remember, you had to... Well, we'll see. We'll see. Go ahead.
Kind of. I mean, I used that, and then... This is just me taking a bunch of pictures.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking through these.
I used a bunch of that clear coat, and it seemed to be good. So you can see where right in the middle... where it's lighter on top where I didn't hit it with clear coat, and it's darker on the bottom where like I'm sealing it in. But you see to the right in the middle where it's really peeling off. So I wasn't quite sure that the clear coat was going to capture all that.
Yeah, look at that.
And that is so far up that I couldn't clear coat it because I'd have to put the ladder against the rest of the sign, and I didn't. So so I didn't clear coat it until like the absolute end.
Okay. So
it's I think it's just.
And so when did you start this? Like, when did you start setting up stuff like ladders?
Like September, I said, "Hey, I want this," and I actually texted my friend from high school, going, "Remember that old sign? I think I want it."
Taking it. Was your wife like, "Where are you?
Oh yeah,
where are you gonna put this?"
It's like, that's not coming into our house. I'm like, yeah, but it's going somewhere.
I mean, I've been in your house. It's a regular size, but it's a nice house.
It's not.
But still, where do you put this thing? But we'll get to that, I guess.
I didn't know. Yeah, and it's funny too because like I'm telling my friend I want this sign, and he's like, "It's weird that you have an attachment to this sign where we went to maybe 3 times while we were in high school." I'm like,
and he's like, "I was the guy who bought more stuff there anyway."
Yeah, he bought way more.
Like, you don't even like comics, Chris.
And I mean, I kind of did, and then I did in high school, and then it took me 10 years, and then I did after college when I lived across, and then I took a 15-year break, and now I've been buying comics again.
But isn't it also something to be said of not wanting to watch some of that history, whether it appeals to some people or not? You know, you don't want to watch it, and you have the capability. You're like, hey, I know how I could maybe save this. No one else is going to do it. I mean, is that part of it too? It's sad to see something.
Yeah, I mean, it's very like when you stand next to it, She-Hulk is bigger than me, and it's just like this is really it's an interesting like art piece itself, and like even if you don't like it as art, every kid in the neighborhood is like, "Wow, Spider-Man and Batman are up on this giant wall. This is cool." And I like it kind of like remembering it from high school, and I always thought it was cool. And I've never been to a comic book store that somebody has a 10-foot by 12-foot hand-painted sign. So then I started. So that's another thing. I started really getting into like hand-painted signs. Like all the signs now are vinyl. So there's not too many people.
Yeah, they're not painting them that way.
Yeah, this would just.
Well, you look like a superhero in this one. You're like Master Elston.
This is me like trying not to inhale all the clear coat that I was spray painting.
Captain Allentown.
So Rigo's art gallery is actually pretty nice. Like compared to when it was a comic book store, it was wood paneling. I don't know when the wood paneling went in. Maybe when it was the realtor, but it was like it's really nice now. He has like chandeliers in there, and it's a shotgun kind of like. Before it kind of had walls and separation, and now it's just one big room.
And everyone, you can see the address there. So it's 1601.
Chew Street.
West
Chew Street, yeah.
Some more of that. So you get in the process of doing this. How long, how long does it take? Well, again, too, talking about, like, you were saying, I saw some posts where you're just doing work and people are coming up to you like, what are you doing?
Oh, yeah. Like, so many people would walk up to me and go, oh, I used to take the kids to this comic book store and Halloween, and he would hand out little mini comic books instead of candy, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then like one guy came up to me and he's like, oh wait, this is just me clear coding.
This
fact,
is great.
so I'm going to make a little mini documentary about my whole
You should.
life.
Yeah.
You can see how big, compared to my hand, how big the face is.
Yeah, this is huge.
Giant. So I tried to clear coat it, and this is before I figured out like how to. So I was doing Gold Seal Realty.
Right.
So the guy that owned Gold Seal Realty actually owned a theater company, and I'm trying to think if it's out in Dorneyville or something. He owned a theater company. So I was doing a deep dive on that guy, and then somebody said they were walking by and like, this used to be a pharmacy. I'm like, oh,
okay.
It used to be a pharmacy. Oh, yeah. So there's, I kind of like this.
Well, it's fun. Yeah, it's great.
So, so this is Rigo.
Oh, and there's the inside of Rigo's.
Yeah. Really nice.
This
this guy's
looks
a
nice.
legit painter.
Oh my goodness! He should get in the NFT market.
Yeah, yeah.
We can help him out.
Oh,
it's so fun. Yeah.
And I was just going into Instagram and into every single social media just to figure out like if anyone had older pictures of it, and not that many people took a picture of the sign. I'm like, what? Like,
but you had a lot of people who helped you, at least in terms of like they had some memories. I mean, or a couple leads.
So some older. If you go to Google Earth, there's three 360s that I did. One where the gray bar was still there, one where I cleaned it off, and one after I took the sign down. So people would come. So there's me like pulling it away. So people would come by and go, "This used to be Mess Pharmacy. I used to go to Mess when I was a kid. Oh, I used to go to this comic book store. Oh, I love this sign. Oh, people would like walk by and go, "Oh, the comic book store's not here anymore." Like they love the sign even without it knowing that like.
And they just assume, yeah. So do you start then? Go ahead.
So yeah, then I put this polyacrylic down with a paintbrush because it was a lot thicker, and just to hold everything in. So yeah, I just like people would stop and just say, "Hey, this is cool," and then one guy would stop and like, "Hey, you painting over that?" I'm like, "Well, I'm kind of trying to save it," and he's like, "My father-in-law painted that." I'm like, "What?
What? Wait, like walking by you?"
Yeah, he just stopped by and saw that I was working on it. He works in the son-in-law works in Allentown at this like nonprofit bikes for kids kind of place. And I'm like, yeah, I need all the information you have.
What is his social security number?
Yeah, I need it all. So the guy's name is Tom Wild. He was a middle school teacher in Allentown for a while. He was a high school English teacher for a while.
Okay.
And I met him, and I got him to come, and I asked him about the paint, and he said it's one-shot paint. It's very special sign painter's paint. And I'm like, how would I get latex off of this thing? And he's like, oh, you should try this or maybe alcohol or whatever. So I started using alcohol to take the latex off.
Okay.
So it started to work.
So the original painter gives you some tips.
Tips on how to do it, yeah.
How to do it, yeah.
Let's see what this video is. Oh, so this is me putting like a thicker coat on. So I'm hoping that this kind of seals it in.
And just keeps it wherever it is now, like to keep it at that.
Right. So now you can see there's like kind of a different sheen on it, and you can actually see in the upper right, you can kind of see my brush strokes. So I'm kind of changing it as I'm going, but I'm hopefully protecting it and not changing it too much. So I got to a point where, so the alcohol is working, and I uncovered.
Yeah. So what are we looking at here? What does the alcohol do?
So the alcohol, this took forever, but I'm just kind of and when it broke all the way to the rusty metal, that's kind of hard to get the alcohol off.
Okay.
But I was able to get the latex off. So somebody graffitied the sign, and then the old owner just painted a big latex gray box over the graffiti and then just left it. So I was able to get the graffiti off. So there's me like, so I put the blue shop towels on, spray it with alcohol, let it sit for a while, peel it off, and then kind of wipe it down with another wet rag, and then do.
How long is this take? Like, are you going in? Like, are you like, hey, I'm gonna go for 2 hours today?
So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a half day every time, and I freelance, so it's like some days I'm available, some days I'm not available, and since it's COVID, like some days I'm just doing Zoom meetings, and then I have time to go do it, and some days I'm out of town and I don't have. So it's taking me. This was like a several month process of like clear coding, trying to find, and then as I'm doing this, I'm like researching the sign, and I'm researching other things, and then I'm trying to find a place to actually put this, because I'm like, if worst comes to worst, I think I can take all this down, put it in my shed, and wait till the spring, and figure out where to do it. So I was trying to get it in Juxta Hub, which is a new art community center that they're trying to build in Emmaus, and they have a couple things built, but they don't have like the full thing. So as I'm doing this, somebody said, well, try Allentown Arts Commission, and I contacted them, and they said, hey, you should contact Brandon Wonder at the
Alternative Gallery.
Alternative Gallery. And he's like, I like this, like when you're done with this whole process and it's all set, bring it to us. And then I said, oh, good. So I can store it at Juxta Hub, and then I'll bring it over to the Alternative Gallery on 4th Street in Allentown. And then Juxta Hub denied me. Like they're not really set up yet. So
that's fine. Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
I said, hey, Brandon, can I just move this whole thing? And he's like, yeah, I'll give you a corner in the basement, and we'll do it. I'm like, great.
And for anybody who hasn't been to the Alternative Gallery, I mean, it's a fantastic what they do there. It's always different. There's always stuff going on there. I haven't been in a while, unfortunately, due to everything that's going on, but
it's a really cool building.
It's fascinating. Like, I've been on the roof there, and it's great.
Here's me and my daughter. We went to see Matt Blum at the
Matt
West Park. I forget what it's called. Art in the Park. So we went to see him. I'm like, hey, while we're gonna see him, let's go to the.
You see what Dad's been doing? You're like, gosh.
Let's see what Dad's been doing on his mural. I did a bunch of time lapses.
Like, this is where Dad is every day.
Right. So I finally got most of the latex paint off.
Okay. Man.
And then it's like, and then I'm like, oh crap! Now I got to work on the spray paint.
The graffiti that was underneath the latex.
The graffiti that was underneath. So it's kind of hard, because if this was a clean sign, fresh with one-shot paint, I think it would have been a little bit easier. But because
it's just like it's layers and layers and years, and you don't know. There's no record of what they put on there.
Right, and some of it is bumpy. So like the smooth stuff was a little bit easier to clean off, but the bumpy stuff, like I didn't want to rip off the bumpy paint as I'm scrubbing really hard. So I tried WD-40, kind of worked a little bit. So yeah, I just documented my whole process. So
why not? I would. Yeah, it's great.
Get that off. Yeah, turn that off. So a little bit WD-40 is kind of working. So I got some of that on.
And we're looking at that blue paint is what we're looking at.
Yeah, the blue paint was the spray paint. So yeah, you can tell the difference between.
Do you know what they painted there? Was it like good? I can see. It's just like a tag.
There's a tag and a fleur-de-lis or something. I can't tell what it is. I'm not hip enough to know what that is.
It's probably, who knows when it's from. That kid, they're probably like 35 now.
It's from late 2016 or 2017.
Oh, okay.
Because I took a picture of it clean in 2016.
Gotcha.
And you can see on the lower right somebody else with like brown spray paint painted over that. So you can see the difference between the gray box.
Oh yeah, it's noticeable.
Gray box. So whatever that is, I took a bunch of different stuff. Let's see.
I think it says fuck. That's probably why.
Oh, maybe. So there's a time lapse of me getting a bunch of latex off. So then it
takes forever. Okay, keep going. Yeah.
So then I used a bunch of different. So this is me with a little brush trying to get the latex off because I didn't want to crack all this stuff off.
Okay.
So instead of rubbing it, it sounds like I'm really scraping it, but I'm not. It's a soft brush. So this was the hard part, trying to get this latex out of the cracks. on that.
Yeah, man.
So that took a while. And then this brown spray paint, I don't think I'm ever getting off.
Wow, and you can see, what is that, like the black area on the left, or the gray, or is that like the metal? Is that the bottom layer?
Yeah, that's lower left is the metal that it chipped all the way off to the metal. So
and so what you're seeing there is just the accumulation of all those different things on top of the metal.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
So let me see if there's anything that I. Oh, so then I did a deep dive on David Mest, who owned the shop, because I was trying to find anyone that like.
Sure. Or who had a connection. You can be like, hey, like something.
Hey, do you have any pictures of your grandfather outside his store next to the sign? Because I'm still trying to figure out like what the sign looked like when it was Mest Pharmacy. So I used some wax to get it off, because I've heard like if somebody gets overspray of spray paint onto their car, you can use some wax and it'll get it. All right. So that seemed to work the best.
That's great. You could like, because that was covered. His right eye there, right under almost all of that. His face was covered, and you revealed that, correct? Or
his face was covered with the gray spray paint, but the blue is still.
But still, you uncovered that. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So it took forever.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, so I found a Gerald SMS Drugs matchbook cover online.
One clue closer.
Yeah. So okay. So reliable prescriptions.
They had matches there.
Maybe it said reliable prescriptions underneath. Oh, so there's a picture of the new, not the original, but this is the Butler that I remembered.
Right.
And this is when it was being sold. Oh, so this is C.L. Hollenbach. So this is the grocery store at 16th and Chew, which it was from early 1900s till like early 1940s.
So do you kind of have an idea of everything that's been in that space since this one then? Yeah.
And it's interesting because from what I can tell, the corner store was a grocery store, and like 5 buildings in was a pharmacy. Mr. Mest bought that pharmacy, and at some point they kind of flip-flopped. So I think then the corner store became the pharmacy, and the other store became a little grocery store.
Okay.
Because Mr. Mest bought the pharmacy business, but the pharmacy business was a couple buildings down. So I'm just guessing at things. So
no, but yeah, it makes sense.
So that was grocery store, pharmacy. And then I'm noticing, hey, there's a soft spot that's not cracked. That's a big P. So I'm pretty sure that was the P from pharmacy. And I can't really see the rest of the word. You can see some places where there should be a word, but I'm sure it said giant pharmacy across there.
Do you have like a layer? Like, do you know where you can go, okay, layer 1, layer down to layer Briars? Or is it too hard to tell?
It's hard to see layers, but I can see it cracking. I can see that oval cracking through all the way to the metal, and I can see where it cracked all the way to, say, ice cream.
That's interesting.
So I was like 99%. And I was trying to find, and I know there was a Briars distributor in Allentown in the early 40s, and before and after. So I'm like, this was definitely a Briars ice cream sign at some point. And I'm 80% sure that it was the Hollenbach grocery store Briars ice cream sign.
I mean, again, yeah, I mean, just using some deduction, that makes sense.
And because I kept going back and forth between, well, did Mr. Mest sell food? And everybody's like, I don't remember him ever. It was just a drugstore. It's just that kind of stuff. And I'm like, all right, so maybe it is from the grocery store. And then I saw, I'm countered. I saw once where Mr. Mest was looking for somebody to run their lunch counter. So I think maybe for a couple of years they tried to serve food, but I don't think it lasted very long.
Was that like a job listing?
Yeah, like a job listing in an old morning call. So I'm trying to piece everything together. So I uncovered all of that, and
now at this point you're doing pretty well. I mean, you've talked with Rigo. You're gonna get this. Yeah. Conversations with people walking by. You've met the artist himself.
Met the artist. I've gotten most things off. This took forever. This is a lot of elbow grease. I kept going back and going back and going back.
You know, see like a drill.
At this, Yeah, well, I didn't. Yeah,
But you're working with this is too delicate. Yeah, I know.
right.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to like. I mean, the one shot paint is really strong and should last almost forever or last a long time. But because it was painted on three other signs, I don't know how hard it is onto the original
Right.
metal, the original. And who knows what the paint was. The final paint was one shot really hard enamel paint, but who knows what the paint was three
That it's
signs.
attached to, and
Yeah.
it's just like a big, yeah, like a sandwich.
So this is when somebody, an older person in the neighborhood, was like, "This used to
Yeah,
be
I can
Mest
see that.
Pharmacy," and I went, "Oh my God, there's a T there. Oh my God, there's an S there. Oh, there's an E." So there's where it says Mest Pharmacy, and then the picture before is where the P was for Mest Pharmacy.
All
And
right.
it looks like the pharmacy would have overlapped where the Briars sign was, so that's why I'm thinking
That it
Briars-
wasn't there, and it was
Yeah,
yeah.
Briars was first, and then the pharmacy sign. This is almost impossible to see, but this in the middle says EAT, EAT.
I
The
can't.
A, the lowercase a is in the middle. The
Okay,
T-
yeah, I get it. And the T's to the right there. I can see
Yeah.
the line.
So that
Right.
was part of the Briars ice cream sign that it's breaking.
You're like,
over.
maybe they were talking about eating ice cream.
But if you look at the
Sure.
Briars, wait, if you go back to, is this it? Yeah. Oh, so this I don't have it in this one. All right, I have another Briars sign
Where you can see where that eat
where
was.
it
Okay.
says "Eat Always." So their old logo said "Eat Always." There's something else here that I can't figure out. It either says GIV or something. It's funny, like the different times of day and
The sunlight, like,
the sunlight hits it, you can see different things. That's why I need somebody to give me a picture of the Mest Pharmacy sign and the Hollenbach sign, if that's available. Or even,
Yeah.
I only have half of the Realty sign, and I'd love to see what the whole Realty sign looked like. So
there we go. Eat always. Okay.
So I see where the eat is. I see where the ice cream is. I don't see where the always is. And I think Tom Wilde, the original artist, scraped a bunch of the middle off because it's really smooth there. That part isn't cracking. So I think he might have scraped like initially what the
Right.
primary sign is.
So will you get like you're at this point now? Is like the weather starting to be any sort of?
Yeah, it's getting
because like you started in what, like September. We're coming up.
It was nice and warm, and then I kept going there where it's raining and it's getting cold, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to get this off the wall before before it gets too cold because I can't spray paint anymore.
And couldn't you? I mean, I don't know much about this, but couldn't you kind of get it to a point where it's safe enough to transport, get it somewhere inside, and then work on it more?
Yeah, but that was I was at a point where like nobody wants this thing, and I'm like,
Right.
I have to take this piece by piece and put it in my shed, and then I'm not going to have enough room for my snowblower.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is the eat. So finally, I got to a point where Brandon said, "Hey, why don't you just bring the whole thing here, and I'll give you a space in the basement
Sure.
to work on it. And there's a guy that does all their woodwork for it. He'll help me build a new frame for it because this is
Wow.
completely rotted."
Yeah.
So here's a bunch of stuff coming off. I used some Goo Gone too. Let me see where I'm at. So yeah, you can see the blue getting lighter and lighter, but it's still kind of there.
It's a lot of elbow grease too, and it's
And it's like I don't want to hurt it, and I don't. But
I don't want to rush.
I
Right.
want it to come off because I want it to look like it did in like 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can see like the clear coat that I put on, I think is getting white because I'm putting so much alcohol on it that the clear coat is like hazing up. So you can see
Okay.
it like in Cerebus's snout and kind of in She-Hulk's
Yeah.
hole. So now I'm like, oh, now I got to clean up the stuff that I'm
The
doing,
mess I've made. Yeah. I've added to this.
that I've added to it. But eventually it got lighter and lighter. Oh, I used some polishing compound too.
I didn't even know like half these things existed just to
Well,
treat.
it's all like car stuff.
You're just like throwing stuff at it.
Because I'm going down like the lane that it is like if you get spray paint on your car, how do you get it off without ruining anything else?
Right, and this isn't like essentially the same as, again, I'm talking about things I don't know about, but it's not the same as like refurbishing a painting maybe because of the
Right.
The stuff that is
yeah.
painted on.
Then I started doing a deep dive on that, and what they usually do is like the old paintings were painted, and then they'd kind of put a varnish on to protect it, but that varnish would get brown over the years. So there's a certain technique to get that varnish
Yeah, it's
off
like you go to
paint. Yeah, but that's
you do many years of schooling for that.
Right, and it takes forever to try to get that layer off without damaging the paint underneath. And I'm like,
and they're in a controlled environment. They're not on the corner in Allentown. They're doing this. People are yelling at you as you're going by.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to be as delicate as possible, but also get this done before the snow comes.
Right.
So I've done some stuff. There's been some chipped paint that has happened. I'm not as delicate. So I got it finally to a point where it looks.
You're like, hey, we can move this.
Yeah. So it looks pretty good. I've clear coated enough of it. Like the center is. Oh wait.
So, yeah. No thanks.
This whole thing is rotted. This thing is going to fall off, and it's been rotted forever because there's nothing over top to protect it. Mm-hmm. So that whole top that you can see, there's no wood up there anymore.
And then any of the elements coming in are just you know at this point it's like, not that it's not been exposed, but
it's So I'm like, this has got to get down.
Poor Spidey. Look at him. He's like, my eyes broken.
And then I'm like, okay, I got to start figuring out how to get these nails out. And of course, like the nails on the bottom are easy because they were just in rotted wood, so I can get those out really easy. But then I'm like, oh, I think in She-Hulk's forehead there's a nail. So I'm like, oh, how am I going to get this out without wrecking things?
Oh, yeah, I see it.
So there's nails like inside.
Oh, because there's paint. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that I didn't realize. Like they weren't. The nails are not just on the edges. There's a few on the center, and of course, there's like these little 10-penny. I forget what they're called. 10-penny nails that are in there that are kind of easy to pull out. But then, of course, there's these giant, like 2 or 3 inch nails that were all the way into the brick.
You can't really use like a hammer to pull those out.
I'm trying to like tap it a little
crowbar.
bit. Like I've broken so many drill bits because I'm trying to drill the head off so I can just pull the sign off and leave the nail there. But I'm just trying. I'm trying to figure out what all these. I just took video, just getting closer and farther away.
I think it's a great. You should. There are a lot of people who probably aren't watching this who'd be interested in just the history. If you can chronologically put all this stuff together, there's a lot of Allentown history amongst this thing.
Yeah. Well, that my original thing was like, well, I'll just document like what I was doing to preserve this, and then like now I'm like, well, now I want to do. I actually met with Tom Wilde and I interviewed him, the artist, and he's an interesting character. And then I'm like, well, now I kind of want to do a little documentary on the comic book store itself because that was an interesting place.
Yeah, or even that block a little bit. If you're talking about businesses that moved in and out, it's just
Oh, and it's interesting too. Like, I went in I was just trying to. Mest is a hard word because Google always wants to correct it to best, and it's like, how can I find Mest Pharmacy? It's like, did you mean Best Pharmacy? Like, no, I did not.
You got to put those quotation marks around it.
Yeah,
in Google.
Well, I've done that, and nothing comes up. And I do it in newspapers.com is actually pretty good. But then I was just trying to go, before it was 1601 West Chew Street, it was just Chew Street. They didn't say West or East. They just said Chew. So then I searched the address itself into newspapers.com and into Google. And then I was just like, let me just search any pharmacy between 1900 and 1945. And then there's there's one product that is sold in stores that they'll say, hi, the ad will be, buy this product. You can find it in your local pharmacy. Mm-hmm. And then there's a list of 40 pharmacies in Allentown. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like every 3 or 4 blocks would have a pharmacy and a grocery store. Because nobody, maybe you'd have a horse or maybe you'd have a car, but not that many people had cars in the 30s and 40s. So you would just walk to the grocery. You'd probably walk daily to the grocery store to get your food for that day, and then walk back. So every block. So it's kind of cool to see the history of the neighborhoods of this was my pharmacy, this was my grocery store, and I wouldn't go out of the neighborhood to get anything else. So then I'd find just tons of farms.
Well, it's just interesting too. It really is a snapshot. Of course, it's comics and that's fun, but it's a snapshot of just the different time period.
Right. So then
that Tom Wilde that you just showed?
So yeah. So then I convinced Tom Wilde. I'm like, he's like, I don't know why you're that interested in this. I just painted this for like, he got paid like $240.
All right.
It probably includes like his paint and everything to paint this. So he was a high school teacher, and he just would like paint signs on the side. I think he used to paint signs for Hess's.
Okay.
But he would like weekend jobs or summer jobs, he would paint signs. So he painted a bunch of signs at the softball field in Allentown, like all the outfield signs he would paint and stuff like that. And so it was interesting. So this is just a little snippet of him. And there's a lot of road noise in this video, but there's a little snippet of him talking about a brush technique with that one shot.
Okay.
Put it down, they'll spread apart, so the line is thicker. So, and that's when you can tell when you're doing a bad job, the line varies in thickness because you're not keeping a consistent distance of the end of the barrel to the surface.
So I'm going to try to sweeten that sound in the final.
I could hear it, but yeah, I mean,
it was just like
little tidbits.
The mic that I had broke. I had to send it back to the manufacturer, and I finally bought.
I mean, I can still hear it.
You have for the next interview. So
I'm the guy who does the sign.
Hey, I got a sign. Oh, so this is my friend from high school, he was in town at Thanksgiving. So this is from Thanksgiving. He was in town at Thanksgiving, and of course I was out of town in Thanksgiving, so we didn't actually get to meet up. But he sent me this picture. He's like, "Hey, I'm in Allentown. Took a picture next to the sign." I'm like, "Oh, cool," because he thinks I'm crazy, but he also appreciates it. So
he's like, I don't know why you're doing this, but it's awesome. Hey. So continue on.
But he's my friend Chris that we used to drive all over the Lehigh Valley.
In minivans, it's good. It's good.
So then,
there you go.
So then I do a deep dive on. I wonder what
did you read any of that? Is it good?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's.
I haven't heard of it.
So actually, I bought a PDF from the author, like off of his website, of the first, I don't know, 50.
You should send this to him.
He's a weird character, if you can imagine, a weird Canadian alt comic guy.
Okay, so maybe he wouldn't.
Who doesn't use social media. So you have to write him a letter. He has friends or associates that have social media kind of on his behalf. But it's hard to get in contact with this guy.
That's the dream of my life, by the way, when I'm like older too. It's like, I don't have it. You have to send me a letter. I'll get back to it.
Letter, yeah. So I was going, so this is about, I think this issue is from around, June 1985. So I am 80% sure this is the cover that he used. And he just put the sword upright instead of...
Because it would have been down, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Huh. Look at that.
And then I'm like, this is from the year before. This is, I think, 1984.
Well, yeah, you can tell like her eyebrows are very similar.
Her stance and everything. Like, she's just kind of angry. And it's funny because I was talking to Tom Wilde, and he said, "Well, Cerebus is so menacing and kind of at you, and Batman and Spider-Man are swinging in."
You're like, woohoo!
He's like, she's kind of in the background, but I wanted to give her face and expression that would force her into the foreground, even though she's in the background. And I'm like, oh, that's good, because I always liked the face on the She-Hulk.
She-Hulk's no joke.
Yeah. So this was like my 2016 picture. Beachhead was still fairly together, and this is like, 5 years later. It was really getting hit by the elements.
And I mean, you're talking. It's not going to last. How many more years would it have out there? Is this one of those annoying?
All the wood is rotting off, and this thing has deteriorated much more in the past 5 years than it did the past 30 years. So these are the big nails that were in here. That you can see how much paint I chipped off of it.
Just around that, just to get
around
it out.
that hole, just to get that thing out. So that was all the way into the brick. So now that I'm pulling these things out, I'm like, "Ooh, this thing is not stable."
It's gonna fall on here. Yeah.
So I used a bunch of different things. Like I was trying to be gentle with the smaller nails to try to get them out without chipping as much paint out. But those bigger nails, it was like, ah. So now,
you're starting to think about how you're gonna unload this thing. What was your?
I think I can fit the bigger panels in my car. I have a SUV, so I can fit it all the way to the passenger seat. And of course, like, so my older cars, I could fold the passenger seat down all the way forward and just get a bunch of stuff in. In my new car, I can't, it doesn't go forward and it doesn't go all the way back. So there's like this little, you know,
TV
triangle. So now I'm like, oh crap, now how am I doing this? So I was eventually able to cut it off, and
you're taking it off. It makes sense. You don't want to. You're not going to transport this.
And I don't want to sandwich them together. So I'm like, I'm just going to take one piece at a time. Brandon has already said I'm allowed to bring it over. So one piece at a time.
Probably the safest, you know, like the slowest but safest way.
And then I'm like, wait a minute. There's something else painted on the wall there. So now I'm kind of getting excited. I got to take more pieces off to figure out
to see what's there.
What was on the wall. So there's me. It's kind of bent a little bit, but there's me with the sign in my car.
One at a time, yeah.
And so there it is in the basement of Alternative Gallery. There's
Alternative Gallery for people who. That's the parking area in the back.
Yeah, so that's the back kind of loading dock area. It seemed like the same picture. Oh, you know what? I think it's every time I put it onto Instagram,
it doubles it up. Well,
Instagram picture, so now I have double pictures. So then I'm like, look at that! It says test.
Okay.
I wonder what that is. So I got two pieces.
The COVID test back in the
COVID
1920s.
So all the birds. So as I'm
look at all that
ton of dried leaves and bird crap are like getting in my face.
There's some more inside the Alternative Gallery.
That's Brandon. A couple pieces there. And then I just made a meme. I'll go to Tuesday and see the beach. It's at the Alternative Gallery. Yeah. This was the paint underneath that's actually painted on the brick. Oh, and then I did with JuxtaHub.
Okay.
I had a little Zoom meeting, so that's me.
I should get them on. I'm going to JuxtaHub.
Yeah. So you should, yeah. So this is just like we have a weekly meeting just talking about art and stuff, and we've done it since like the beginning of the pandemic. So this is just me like at the sign during the weekly meeting. So then I'm getting more and more off, and I'm like, "What is that?" It's like I can't really.
I see you put the sign there, and so people walking by, I get it.
We'll say. So yeah, I put a sign up just saying, you know, if you miss She-Hulk, you can go see her at the Alternative Gallery.
It's great.
And I loved it. Like this panel itself, I would hang on my living room wall just because I love it that it says comics magazines and it's Batman's head. I think that panel itself is just
and it's weathered. It has that like appeal to it. No, I agree.
I'm like, what is this? So I'm like, so people just keep coming by and going, that looks like it could be. Wait a minute, there was a dairy named Freeman's in the area, and their slogan was "Best by Test." So they had the best. They had the best milk. If you drink it, you test it. So I'm like, oh, so that must have been when it was Hollenbach's grocery store. That
we have Jim. Jim's a big history guy too. So yeah, makes sense. So that would be on the
Hollenbach's grocery store, 1910, 1930s, and then Freeman's was early 1900s, and then it eventually got bought out or folded into Lehigh Valley Dairies.
Huh.
But it was 13th Freeman's. The building's still there. The Freeman's Dairy building is still there. It's something else, but it was like 13th and Tillman or 13th and something. So there's me getting it to. Oh.
Yeah. Tom Wilde, who taught English at Allen.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is a guy, and I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, my mind's blown. So it's funny. Oh, so before Tom Wilde's son-in-law came by, some other just random girl was like, hey, I think my English teacher painted that. And I'm like, wait. And I'm trying to track
Come back. Yeah.
She's driving by, and I'm like, wait.
Stop.
Before I knew who it was, and I'm like, I need to know more information. She's like, oh, I'll be back. I'm like, I'm just a dude on the street. You're not gonna be.
Her kid's in the back, like, Mom, do not stop the car.
Yeah.
This man.
So I finally
Oh, look at that. Wait, is that window, like, how long do you estimate that window was covered?
So this sign was definitely up when it was a pharmacy, and if it was up when it was the grocery store also, it was at least covered from this side since the 30s.
Wow.
And so you can see it says it was painted twice, once in black and once in white, and the white is breaking through the black. So whatever they painted the white with is really strong on the wall. So it says Freeman's Milk, best by test, and it says it twice. And so here in the window is a Breyer's ice cream sign.
That's crazy. And just nobody. What's on the other side of that window?
It's particle board, and
so you wouldn't know it was there. You'd have to go through that.
No, and it was covered up when it was the Beachhead Comics.
That's
so
crazy.
It probably was covered up when it was the pharmacy, and I don't know, maybe it was covered up when it was the grocery store. So it's been covered up from both sides for a long time. But it's a nice looking window.
I don't. Would you imagine that Best by test would be gone if it was open to the elements? Like did the sign protect it?
Or else the black would have come off. Like I've been like rubbing my finger over it, and the white is really on the wall, but the black on top of it is flaking off.
Are they gonna? I mean, I don't want to put Rigo. Like, is he gonna do anything to try to protect this?
Last time I talked to Rigo, he's like, I guess I have to paint that now. I'm like,
no, Rigo.
I don't think you should, but I'm gonna let the Allentown Preservation Society or the Allentown Historical Society deal with that. But I think it's cool. I think if you just kind of rub your hand over it and get the rest of the black off, the milk and the Best by test and the little milk bottle will really pop out.
It's a piece of how many of those are existing? You know, you see some on the sides of buildings, but there's not many. And look how clear that is. You know?
Yeah, I mean it's really cool. And it's like, and then now I did a deep dive on like the Freeman's milk. But anyway, so to prove what was going on, that it was a Breyer sign, there's a Breyer sign there. So just me like trying to figure out if the oval was a Breyer sign, I think it's 99.9%.
Yeah, I would.
That was a Breyer sign. So I was able to get this whole thing down.
Man.
And I don't know if I have a video of it in my.
That's great.
But yeah, so that's that. Cleaning it up.
And now are we at kind of the stage where you have it at the alternative gallery, and you're gonna what is the next move here?
Well, the next move is, oh crap, it's wait. Right before it is at the. I got it to this point because some guy on the street said, I think we can just rip this whole thing down. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe.
Well, some guy walking by is just like, here, I'll help you with the final piece of
the block. I don't know if I have the video. Oh, so there's the eat.
Oh, look at that. What year do you think that's from, if you could?
Well, that was definitely the grocery store.
Right.
So that is at least no later than 1945.
That's crazy.
So probably the 30s, I would
There are people who would pay money for that, I would imagine. Not that.
Yeah.
It's just such a neat thing. It's hidden. You know, no one's had it.
Yes. So now I'm like, so this is how it was built. I was just doing the different corners and stuff. And now I'm like, yeah, I can fit that in the back of my car. There's my car. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh crap, this is way long. Like I can fit a 8 long piece, and then I'm like, oh crap, this is 8 plus 4. No, there's no way. And now, like you can tell the sun's going down. And
what do I do?
What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And somebody's like, well, you should go rent a U-Haul. And I don't know what's going on with U-Haul, but you can never get a real person. You always get their 800 number, and then eventually you get to the local place. I'm like, I'm gonna have to drive a half an hour to get a U-Haul to figure out.
Well, I saw your tweet. Like if I had a truck, I would have swung over.
I tweeted out, anyone have a pickup truck? And the guy that works with Brandon wasn't available that day, and I'm like, I wasn't really expecting to rip this whole thing off today.
But now I'm kind of stuck, right?
Now I'm stuck and I don't know what to do. And the nice neighbors were like, "You can keep it on our porch until you find a place to put it." I'm like, "Well, that's nice."
But yeah, a little easier to.
I really don't want it to. Oh, here's one of the neighbors. So it was really only held on by like 2 L brackets and a couple of those big nails.
Right.
But this is him. I'll turn this off.
Just coming out to hang.
These L brackets off for you. I'm like,
sure.
Yes, please, so that somebody doesn't catch their eyeball on it.
I have to admit though, if I was in my house watching somebody like preserve history across the street, I would generally try to go over and be like, "This is really neat. What are you doing, number one?" And tell me more about it.
Because I was always there when Allen High was getting out, and I I'm the old man on the street, and I kept going, "Hey kids, you want a history lesson?" Like, okay.
Sorry, sir. My mom drove by and told me not to talk to you.
I stopped like a pack of like 10 high school kids, and they're like, "Okay, sure." I'm like, "Hey, look at this. This used to be a pharmacy, so you can see where it says mess. Hey, this used to be a grocery store, so you can see where the Briar sign was. Hey, this used to be this. You can see this, and then it was a comic book store." And they're like, "All right, that's pretty cool."
Yeah, I'm like, "Thanks, man.
Okay, sir.
See ya."
Get out of here. Oh, this is. I don't know. I don't know. I just. So I took a lot more video. Oh, so this is it, kind of like twisting. Oh, and then I finally had to clear coat it at the last minute because I was never able to get all the way up to it. So you can see how it gets a little darker.
Yeah, really.
But these chips are so big and so far away from the metal that we're trying to.
Well, what do you do for these? You just hold them in place.
Yeah. So we're trying to figure out, like, Brandon was like, "Well, maybe we can get like a heat gun and flatten them out and then clear coat it again." I'm like, "Well, maybe that'll work. We'll see."
You should test that. You should test that theory first.
Yeah. Right. Well, we'll try it on like a weird part that's not like the main part of the sign, but also he's like, but also it's been like so many different signs. Like I don't know what is actually peeling up. It might be the original paint that's peeling, and because like the one-shot paint is like really good paint, so I don't know. Who knows? I'll try it.
But at least, okay. So how do you get that? How do you get that final piece down there? You had like a trailer or something? No, you had a canoe, right? A boat.
So I'm on my way. So I was on my way to go to the U-Haul, and I'm kind of like, people are messaging me on the way. So at stop signs, I know I'm not supposed to use my phone in the car, but at stop signs, I'm looking, and my brother-in-law's like, "Dude, you got a trailer." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that trailer is like really old, and it's like it's not that long. I have like a little wooden box trailer that my dad built in like the 50s." I'm like, it's still not long enough. And then I'm like, "Wait a minute. The sign is 12 feet long. I have a 12-foot long boat. I'm gonna put this in." And of course.
What are the neighbors thinking at this point? They're like, "Hey, the guy that's been outside for the last 3 months has pulled up with a boat."
The wiring on my car was not working, so I'm like, "Oh, I gotta take the Scion, my wife's Scion, to pull a boat." So by myself, I got this onto my boat.
Oh man, I'm sorry I wasn't around.
Nobody around to help me. So there it is in a boat, and then I drove it
tied down.
Tied it down.
Well, you had to get some sort of. Was anybody messing with you?
There was a kid that helped me take the sign down itself, and then Rigo came out to actually help me. He had a jigsaw so I could take this part of the sign away from the other part of the sign.
Okay.
But there was nobody else that really was around.
These people like
onto my boat. So here's Craig, and then so I think Brandon has a picture of me like backing it up at the alternative gallery, but. Yeah,
but you got it all in there. So now we're at the alternative gallery.
So now it's all completely at the alternative gallery. And
are you gonna use whatever? So, there's no rush at this point.
No, there's no rush. I'm still kind of cleaning the parts that have hazed over because of the other paint that I've used. So this is my whole journey. It was painted. It was graffitied. I cleaned it up.
It's great.
And then I took it off.
Yep. And you found all this history underneath, which is just... And it's amazing, too. Like, go back to that photo. it's just this little building, right, in Allentown on the corner.
And nobody would drive by it. There's no reason to drive by it. Like,
right, and it just has all of this. But because of that, you went down the like all these different rabbit holes, and it preserves that. This story preserves some history of all the other things. You know, that's why I think it's interesting. The mural itself is interesting, but then finding all this history beneath it is also
it's
very
funny because like so there's two Mests that owned the pharmacy, and I went like deep dive into newspapers.com, and I know when they got married, when they died, like all this stuff like down the line, just trying to find like any information. And I don't know why. I went through the history of like the lot when it was first sold in 1900 whatever, or maybe 1890 something.
Wow.
It was, the lot was sold, and then the building was sold, and all this other stuff. And then there's a so what I want to do is, I haven't done it yet, but I want to talk to the office at the church across the street, because the church across the street on their Facebook page has, you know, some people in their Sunday best dressed up with the comic book store sign in the background.
Yeah, I would imagine if
there's a picture that they have in their archives of somebody in the 40s in their Sunday best going to church with the pharmacy sign in the background. That's all I need. I just need to know like where the words were. I don't even need a clear sign. I just need to know like
that would be fun, because you would imagine like they're taking just photos. At some point they've got to capture something.
So there's me at the beginning.
That's great.
Of there's me in September.
You look more weathered. You're like, oh, this is a journey.
And I'm frozen. It's cold.
I got it off.
It was like sleeting rain that day. So there's me. Oh, and then I get it, and then. So these are pictures that the photographer from the Morning Call took before I.
Yeah, and again, like for people, I have the link in here. If you go to the main post, you can read that whole story. And it did make the paper. You were sad there for a minute.
Yeah, well, yeah, it made it into the digital edition like before Christmas, and then after Christmas it was in the physical paper. So I got it in above the fold on the main.
I like it says, "I'm trying."
So
Chris Elston, I'm trying.
I'm trying.
Just trying.
Should be on my business card.
I'm trying.
I'm trying.
Look at all the stuff I do. I'm trying. But yeah, that's fantastic.
I'm trying.
Now, so you have to save these newspapers now.
Yeah.
So that in 50 years from here, and there you go.
Well, the funny thing is, so I went to Beachhead and talked to the owner of Beachhead, and he gave me an old.
Wait here, I can bring this up.
Where's the focus? He gave me
back a little bit.
So this was from 1986 of the sign with a little kid. So
also, that's great.
And so he gave me the sign. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that picture existed. And they spelled Beachhead wrong. That's why my search didn't find it. And I put that out on Twitter. And a couple days ago, the kid that's in that picture contacted me. He's like, I'd love to see the sign again.
Crazy.
So I'm getting him before the sign's all the way built. I'm going to get him into the alternative gallery and get a picture with him and the deconstructed sign. And then when we reconstruct it again, I'm going to try to get a picture of him and the sign.
So I mean, that's where we're at now. We're just going to wait, and then I'd assume the alternative gallery is where we're going to have some being able to see it again. You're going to be able to display it.
Yeah, so I'm in the process. I'm still kind of cleaning it, and I'm still testing. One Shot, the paint that he used, has a clear coating, and it says like for old signs to bring back their luster. So I just did the bottom right corner in clear coat, and I did that before Christmas, and I haven't been back yet. So I just want to see what that'll look like. I don't know, it might be too shiny, but it's thick and it lays really flat. So I think that might hold everything together, and it might hopefully hold it to the metal itself where it seeps through. So I'm testing different things. I'm still cleaning it, but I'm testing different things, and hopefully we can get a little money to get wood for the sign, because I've spent a lot of money on different.
I'd imagine just all those different.
I've used like gallons of isopropyl alcohol and probably 50 cans of clear coat. So I've spent a bunch of my money So we're trying to see if we can get a little money just to put the sign back together and get new wood.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a wall that they're giving me in the basement, and it'll be on permanent display down there, and hopefully, early. Well, we'll see how long it takes, but
whenever it happens,
at least
we'll be.
Yeah, and hopefully.
Okay, whenever it happens, we'll be sure to share it out. I mean, I'd love to. I want to go in and see it.
Come on by.
So we'll do that too. We've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes, and we still have.
My pet kids think I'm crazy because I can talk about this for like 9 more hours.
Well, it's fascinating, and it's what's fascinating to me too is how, I don't want to say minuscule, but just how small it is when you really think about how much history we're talking about from this sign on a comic book store. Here we are talking for an hour and 10 minutes and have more stuff. I mean, I'm sure you could keep going. This is kind of even.
Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah.
It's funny because like I have a whole interview with Tom Wilde, who's an interesting character, and now I want to do a whole interview on Beachhead, which was full of interesting characters. So yeah, I'm definitely doing like a little mini documentary at the end of this.
All right,
it's not over yet.
All right, well, thank you for that journey, and thank you for everybody who's still watching after an hour and 10 minutes. This is a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I've been watching along as this has gone, and I've learned a ton. So I appreciate it. What can people do? Do you think it's just better now to kind of wait it out? Should they go to your website? Should they check out Alternative Gallery? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think I have a link tree.
That's just give me that. What is it?
Linktree.Elston. It's called Linktree. Link.tr.
Yeah. Elston or Selston?
No, somebody else took Selston. It's Elston. So I'll put new stuff up there.
I'll drop this link in here for everybody.
Yeah, so I mean, from there, my Facebook page, I have just my private Facebook page. I have the pinned post is my whole journey doing this, and
there you go.
My Twitter is the pinned post of doing it too. So eventually, I guess I should make a blog post and have everything all in one place.
Well, the good thing is you documented it already, so now it's just a matter of the tedious process of putting it all together. But the fact that you have it all is great.
If somebody wants to go down my Facebook page, they can see other people commenting and saying, "Hey, I think I think it's Freeman's Milk. Hey, I think it's this."
Well, I love like when the guy from when Tom Wilde shows up, he's like, "Yo, I painted that." Yeah.
No, Tom Wilde, he thinks I'm a crazy person, but he's going along for the ride with me. The son-in-law seemed a lot more interested than Tom did. Tom's like, I don't know why.
Why are you doing it?
You can read it.
It's probably because it's his, yeah.
It's interesting that he's doing this, but I don't know why anybody's interested.
It's okay. There's a lot to it.
He's a great guy. He invited me. I kind of invited myself to his house and painted him painting a new part of the sign. But yeah.
And it's neat too that people remember him from that long ago, and he's like you said, he's still out there doing stuff. So kudos to Tom.
I mean, he seemed like a really good teacher, and kids that are adults now that have had him said, "I really liked him as a teacher. I didn't even know that he's painted that." Or some people knew he painted, and some people didn't, but they all seemed to like him as a teacher.
All right, man. This has been fun. I learned a lot. Thank you. Appreciate it. Stay on the line here for a minute.
All right.
Goodbye to everyone. Thank you guys for watching across the networks. And we will talk to you soon. Have a happy new year. Peace out. Thank you, Chris Elston.
Thanks, George.